Let's turn now to Abba Hikima, a legal practitioner, to help with this discussion. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you,
Yes,
it's my pleasure.
He was granted bail on one case, and while he was still trying to get out of jail, he was arrested on another. And then the judge rejects the bail application, remanding him until the 20th. What is your thoughts about this case against Malami and how it has been handled by the EFCC thus far?
Well, let me first begin by saying that, the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation is one that demands, the highest probity, the highest, ethical conduct, higher than that of an average public officer. And so the fact that Malami, or Malami as we call it, is being arraigned from one case to another over, what appears to be prima facie allegation of conduct or misconducts, which are offenses in Nigeria, is itself embarrassing because the Office of the AGF ought to have exhibited the highest personal and institutional integrity such that it does not even give room for prosecutors to be able to frame, prima facie charges against the occupiers of that office. But that being said, the reality today is that Malami is being, bedeviled by one case, yesterday and another today. It is embarrassing, even though I feel, the case he's facing currently of terrorism financing and, in accordance with the Terrorism Prevention Act is somehow politically charged. Not to say that Malami has not done anything wrong or he has behaved himself in the way he should as an occupant of that very highest office, like I said, but because, the way from what is publicly available, the case ought to have come under the Firearms Act, because if you possess a firearm, without license, as the charge read, which I saw on the internet, of course, assuming I've read the right thing, then that charge ought to have come under the Firearms Act, of the 1950s or 1960s, but not actually under the Terrorism Prevention Act, and then also the other charge, which is about failure to prosecute people or financiers of terrorism, also somehow coming against, a former Attorney General of the Federation raises, some questions because the Attorney General of the Federation, even by virtue of Section 174 of the Constitution of Nigeria, that office is imbued with a lot of prosecutorial discretion. And so it is rather notable that an occupant of that office is being charged in Nigeria for failure, for omission and not for commission. There are two different things. You can be charged for commission of a crime, and you can also be charged for omission to act in a particular way. So the way I understand it is that Malami is now being charged for failure to act in a particular way. And so there's a high duty on the prosecution to be able to show that really he has conducted himself, that, it was likely that he was
a high duty indeed. And thank you for that clarification, because when I was reading it, I was wondering the allegation of aiding financing in terms of not acting, like you said, in a particular way. There are two separate allegations, one of aiding and another unlicensed arm. Talk to us about the possible the possible rulings in this instance. What would be the consequences for Malami and his son?
In Nigeria, Malami is not supposed to possess any firearms without license, going by the Firearms Act of the 1959, if I'm not mistaken. And it is actually an offense to actually possess one, including the cartridges that were also found allegedly in his house, the live ammunitions. They all constitute an offense. But like I said, equating that with terrorism is actually a big deal. And that is why I saw that there's perhaps there is likely to be evidentiary difficulty on the part of the prosecution to be able to establish that. The case is sub judice, and I'm not allowed to say the case is going to go this way or that way. But like I said, from what is publicly available and from the charge itself and what they have, I mean, the description of the firearms found in his house, it is much more likely that the offense committed, if any, is actually against the Firearms Act and not the Terrorism Prevention Act of the 2022.
Okay, let's talk about the denial of bail by Justice Abdulmalik. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, he was a public figure. There might be other consideration. He had already perfected, bail conditions on another charge. What do you think could have made the judge to reject bail condition? And what are the chances that if the application comes up again, he will grant them that relief?
First of all, it is important for Nigerians to understand that the charge against Malami is actually against the Terrorism Prevention Act, and it's actually a huge one. It is a felony, because the sentence, if he's eventually convicted, is going to be above 7 years, and that's what we call felony. It's likely even going to reach even 20 years or more. So in fact, some sentences under the Terrorism Prevention Act, could even be life imprisonment. I have not really read the punishment section, so I wouldn't comment on that. But I just want to say that any offense, contemplated by the Terrorism Prevention Act is a big one. And a judge, just like Malami had prosecutorial discretion, the judge now sitting and trying this case has what we call judicial discretion. And he is duty bound to make sure that in cases which are felony, like I said, he does not just grant bail to the defendants. So actually, and also it is important to understand that the fact that he has secured bail in the previous charge against him in 2025, being prosecuted by the EFCC, does not automatically means that he should also be given bail or granted bail in this instance.
Serious charges, cases. So the likelihood of
the judge was very much within his right. The judge was very much within his right.
Yeah, the charges were weighty, and I wanted you to speak to that. Thank you very much for speaking with us.